In the Lingdo calendar of 2012, on the 4th of May, early in the morning, the Lingdo Empire's imperial palace. As the administrative center of the Lingdo Empire, the only empire on the mainland, and the place of imperial power that all humans on the mainland aspire to, the Lingdo Empire Palace should have been a prosperous and majestic atmosphere, but these days, it has been inexplicably shrouded in a layer of haze. The guards on duty in the palace and the passers-by all had gloomy and expressionless faces. There was an atmosphere of anxiety and depression flowing throughout the palace. What you guys mean is that you guys, not to mention activating this ancient formation, can't even prepare the most basic elemental solution. In the main hall of the palace, a middle-aged man with a majestic face appeared. Sitting at the top of the hall, on the dragon chair that represents imperial power, this middle-aged man is none other than Alexander the Great, the current emperor of the Lingdo Empire. In front of Alexander the Great, several old men stood respectfully with their heads lowered. All of these old men were famous figures on the mainland, either the presidents of various trade unions in the mainland, or some peerless people living in seclusion on the mainland. A strong man, any one of them, with just a stomp of his feet, can cause a storm and cause a shock in the continent. But now, in front of Alexander the Great, the only empire in the continent, they were all as respectful as children, trembling and nervous. Looking at Alexander the Great with calm eyes and a flat voice in front of him, an old man swallowed hard and summoned the courage to tremble. Your Majesty, although the elemental liquid required for the formation is only the 5th level high-grade 5 elements potion, any 1/6 level elixir masters can prepare it. But the 5-element potion required by the formation is not the ordinary 5-element potion. The concentration it requires must reach the highest critical value of the potion concentration, although the next few people have reached 8. At the level of an imperial master of spiritual medicine, but it really can't be prepared, ha. Alexander the Great snorted, his eyebrows twitching. People who are familiar with him all understand what is happening at this moment. He was suppressing the volcano-like anger in his heart that was about to explode. You all claim to be legends in the pharmacist world, but you can't even prepare the 5th level top-grade 5 elements potion. Humph, you so-called the president of the mainland elixir union, the first palace elixir in the empire, and the dean of the Lingdo Academy, the first academy in the empire, are all of them just losers? What do you do for a living? I don't care about you. I just want to know how long it will take for the 5 elements potion. I want to appear in front of me. A trace of cold murderous intent burst out from Alexander the Great in vain. Looking at Alexander's expression at this moment, he was almost crazy. Alexander was in an extremely irritable mood these days. The empire's only prince and his only son had unfortunately contracted an extremely serious terminal disease not long ago, and his life was in danger. Alexander the Great worked diligently throughout his life and was an extremely enlightened emperor. Under his leadership, the Lingdo Empire ushered in a peaceful and prosperous era. In the eyes of all his subjects, Alexander had always been calm and steady, but this time, he completely lost his temper. The ministers had long been accustomed to Alexander the Great being a powerful emperor, but they forgot that in front of his children, he was also just an ordinary father. As soon as the prince became ill, Alexander the Great immediately ordered the search for a treatment. After various efforts by the imperial royal family, and after all the hardships, the doctors of the empire finally found the only way to treat the prince. That is to reactivate the vitality in the prince's body through an ancient life-continuing magic circle. Although this ancient life-continuing magic circle is extremely old and has long been lost among the people, information about this magic circle was still found in the huge treasure house of the Lingdo Empire, the only empire in the mainland, and a new question also appeared. In front of Alexander the Great. The activation of this ancient life-continuing magic circle must be activated with extremely high concentrations of the 5 elements potion. After receiving the news, Alexander the Great immediately summoned all the most powerful elixir masters in the empire. In Alexander's view, this 5-element elixir, which was only a 5th-level top-grade elixir, was in danger in front of the powerful 8th-level elixir masters in the empire, is not a problem at all. But what Alexander the Great didn't expect was that several days had passed, and the elixir masters in the empire had replied to him, but one of them could not be prepared. This made Alexander almost furious. The old men standing in front of Alexander Emperor looked at each other. Their eyes lingered on Alexander Emperor and then returned to the old man who spoke before. The old man glanced at Alexander the Great, who was in a rage, and said in a trembling voice, "Your Majesty, we have worked together to prepare the 5 elements potion. There is really nothing we can do about such a high concentration of 5 elements potion. Although the 5 elements potion is only the 5th grade top grade, if you really want to prepare a 5-element potion with such a high concentration that reaches the highest critical value of potion concentration, I am afraid that only one person in the entire continent can do it." "Who?" Alexander the Great's eyes lit up instantly and his tone was anxious. "Master Jason." The old man spit out a name softly. When he said these 4 words, the old man's originally frightened look when facing the furious Alexander the Great became extremely calm in an instant. There was only incomparable piety revealed in his shining eyes. "Master Jason." Alexander the Great's tone suddenly softened when he heard the name, and his expression was also full of respect. "How could I forget Master Jason? Quick, do any of you know where Master Jason lives now? Wherever you are, hurry up and invite Master Jason." Alexander the Great's originally frowning brows relaxed in an instant. No, I want to visit Master Jason in person and invite him to the Empire. Be a guest." After hearing the name Master Jason, Alexander the Great felt no worries at all at this moment. The stern continent is a continent where the strong are respected, and Alexander the Great, as the emperor of the only empire on the continent, the Spirit Do Empire, can be said to be the most powerful person in the entire continent, even those 8th-level elixir emperors, 9th-level elixir masters, etc. Holy Spirit masters had to bow their heads in front of Alexander the Great. However, there is one person on the mainland whom Alexander the Great would respectfully address as master at all times, without any disrespect. That is the recognized number 1 person on the mainland, the 9th-level elixir master, Jason. Halloween Mountain is a high mountain located in the center of the mainland. Due to its special geographical location, it has beautiful scenery and pleasant climate all year round. And then, it is such a comfortable place. Within 100 miles around Halloween Mountain, there is no human habitation, because everyone nearby knows that Master Jason, the most recognized person in the continent today, lives on this high mountain. Although the location of Halloween Mountain in the center of the continent is extremely advantageous, and no one has issued any statement around it, whether it is the merchants traveling to and from the center of the continent, or the robbers and bandits on the nearby business roads, and even the mainland, the wealthy families who have been passed down for many years, and the imperial ministers of the empire will naturally stay away from this place when they pass by. When passing by, their expressions are full of respect, and they do not dare to go overboard in the slightest. However, today, at the foot of Halloween Mountain, which has always been inaccessible, an extremely luxurious motorcade appeared. Sitting on the luxury carriage in the middle of the motorcade was a middle-aged man wearing a dragon robe with a majestic face. It was Alexander the Great and others who came to Halloween Mountain to seek help from Master Jason. In the forbidden area of Halloween Mountain, whoever comes is stopped, otherwise, we will kill without mercy. Just when the convoy just arrived at the foot of the mountain, a shocking ray of light suddenly shot out from halfway up the mountain, and fell in front of the convoy in an instant. A cold voice appeared in everyone's ears, the light faded, and what appeared in front of everyone was a middle-aged man wearing a blue robe, with proud eyebrows and cold eyes, and an extraordinary bearing. It turns out to be Master Rog. I also ask Master Rog to inform Master Jason that Alexander Gaia of the Spirit Do Empire has something to see Master Jason. Alexander the Great, who came down from the luxurious carriage in the middle, saw the man in cyan in front of him. The middle-aged man in robe showed a hint of surprise in his eyes and a hint of respect in his tone, while the old men who came with Alexander around Alexander also showed a hint of surprise in their expressions. The middle-aged man wearing a blue robe in front of them was recognized by almost everyone. He was a famous 9th-level Holy Spirit Master on the mainland. You must know that there are currently only 2 9th-level Holy Spirit Masters in the entire Lingdo Empire royal family. Everyone in the Lingdo Empire holds a high position. This Master Rog had also visited the royal family of the Lingdo Empire a few years ago. In order to keep him in the Lingdo Empire, Alexander the Great promised him the position of National Teacher of the Empire, and the Dean of the First Academy of the Empire, Lingdo Academy, were all rejected by him, which made Alexander the Great deeply regretful. Over the years, there has been little news about Master Rog. He did not expect that he would actually be watching the mountain gate for Master Jason at Halloween Mountain. Thinking of this, Alexander the Great could not help but feel helpless at the moment. I am afraid that there are only people like Master Jason on the entire continent who can allow a peak spiritual master like Master Rog to guard the mountain gate willingly without asking for anything in return. Come on, Master Jason, the Emperor of the Lingdo Empire, Alexander the Great, is here to visit you. In a cabin on the top of Halloween Mountain, an old man stood in front of a young man who looked to be only in his 20s. His expression was full of respect. No one would have thought that this extremely ordinary-looking young man would be the only 9th-level elixir master on the continent, Master Jason. And if Alexander were to see the appearance of the old man who reported to Jason, I am afraid that Alexander the Great would vomit blood in depression. This old man is the #1 elixir in the Empire and the president of the mainland elixir guild Osley. Senior brother, the famous 8th-level elixir emperor master in mainland China, Master Bizendoge. But here, this famous master on the mainland is just an ordinary assistant in front of Master Jason. Alexander? Do you know what's wrong with him? Jason frowned slightly. Now he was about to make an extremely important preparation. Naturally, he didn't want to be disturbed by anyone, even if that person was the only imperial spirit in the mainland. Fighting against the emperors of the empire, in Jason's mind, the only important thing in this world is the preparation of the elixir, and the rest is irrelevant. I heard Rog say that Alexander the Great seems to want to ask you for a bottle of a 5th-level high-quality potion with a concentration that reaches the highest critical value of the potion, the 5 Elements potion. Just for this? Jason was stunned for a moment, and then said, I remember that there are a few bottles of 5 Elements left over from the last preparation in pharmacy number 3. Because they were not up to standard and not in the ultimate perfect state, I plan to discard them. Potion, please give it to Alexander. Although it is to be discarded, the concentration of those bottles of 5 Elements potion has reached the highest critical value of the potion. After saying all this, Jason turned and walked into the innermost part of his room. Preparation room, I need to make an extremely important preparation now, and nothing can disturb me. Staring at the 3 polygonal rhombus crystals in front of him that emitted blood-red dazzling light, Jason breathed out slightly to calm down his slightly excited mood. After a moment, Jason's eyes became clear. At this moment, Jason will face the most severe challenge since he was promoted to the 9th-level elixir Saint Master. He is to make the legendary holy level elixir, which can make an ordinary fire-type spiritual disciple instantly heal in a short period of time after taking it. Vulcan liquid that has reached the 9th level of Holy Spirit Master. In order to collect all the materials to make Vulcan liquid, Jason used all the help he could use, and finally obtained these 3 pieces of fire. Their growth years were no more than 10 years apart, and their fire elemental capacities were almost the same. The spiritual core of a 9th-level fire dragon with a compatibility of over 95% of the spiritual elements. Gently scanning the instruments on the tables around him, Jason nodded slightly, walked to a table with nearly 10 crystal bottles containing liquids of various colors, and picked up the first crystal bottle on the table. He skillfully unscrewed the bottle cap, quickly poured the red liquid in the crystal bottle into his mouth, then threw the finished crystal bottle on the table, and then picked up the second crystal bottle. A crystal bottle containing purple liquid. The skillful movements are like flowing water without any pause, giving people a pleasing feeling. Fire Spiritual Power Immunity Potion. Spirit Element Sensing Potion. Agility Strengthening Potion. Psychic Strength Potion. Bottles of auxiliary potions were quickly poured into Jason's mouth, and a moment later, the nearly 10 bottles of colorful potions originally on the table were already empty. A flash of light flashed in his eyes, and Jason quickly picked up the 3 fire dragon spiritual cores and came to a large bottle filled with transparent liquid that shone like stars. He hesitated and quickly threw the 3 ninth-level fire spirit cores in. When throwing them, Jason's hands shook skillfully, with a unique vibration, causing the 3 fist-sized spirit cores to fall. When it fell into the transparent liquid, no water splash came out. Those flickering silver lights quickly attached to the surface of the fire-type spiritual core that was emitting red light after the spiritual core was invested. Amidst bursts of chirping sounds, the 3 ninth-level fire-type spiritual cores it dissolved at a speed visible to the naked eye. In a moment, the 3 fire spirit cores as big as fists had disappeared without a trace. A layer of dark red viscous liquid flowed slightly at the bottom of the big bottle, refracting waves of faint blush appeared, and on top of the red liquid was a large area of colorless transparent liquid. Spirit Element Separation Liquid is an auxiliary medicine that can be used by spiritual pharmacists to separate spiritual elements from any solid objects such as spiritual crystals, spiritual cores, spiritual ores, etc., and separate spiritual elements from impurities. That layer of dark red viscous liquid is the fire element essence separated from the 3 ninth-level fire element cores by the element separation liquid. Jason, who had taken the elemental sensing potion, could clearly feel the surging power of the fire element coming from the layer of red liquid. Taking out a moonstone about the size of a thumb from the shelf next to him, Jason quickly poured it into the remaining transparent liquid on top of the fire element essence. After a violent boiling, only a deep layer of liquid remained in the entire bottle. Red Fire Elemental Essence. His hands flew quickly on the experimental table. A large number of liquids, items, and powders of various sizes were put into the bottles one by one under Jason's operation. The rapid operation made Jason's hands after images appeared on the experimental table. Such a speed would be difficult for even a powerful 7th-level Imperial Spirit Master to achieve. It is hard to imagine that it would appear on a spiritual medicine master who does not know any spiritual skills. In an instant, a large number of bottles and jars appeared on the experimental table in front of Jason, leaving only a medicine bottle containing blue liquid and a bottle of yellow-brown medicine powder. At this point, the fire element essence in the bottle is still very stable after constant changes and reactions. However, the fire element essence that was originally extremely surging and could clearly sense the fire element's breath seems to have converged now. In general, nothing is lost. After hesitating for a moment, Jason poured the yellow-brown powder into the bottle of blue liquid potion. After mixing it evenly, he slowly and cautiously poured it into the fire element essence. The high-intensity operation caused a layer of fine sweat to break out on Jason's forehead, which wetted his hair on both sides. In fact, in the production of the real, Vulcan liquid, the last step is to use the juice squeezed from a plant called dragon flame grass to neutralize all the previously added medicines, but it is a pity that this kind of dragon flame grass disappeared from the mainland thousands of years ago. Jason, who did not have the dragon flame grass, had to use a mixture of centuries-old datura powder and elemental water mixed with the juice of the dragon heart grass leaves to replace the juice of the dragon flame grass. Such a substitution is only feasible in theory. As for the real effect, Jason, as a 9th-level elixir master, is not sure at all. However, in the modern era without dragon flame herb, Jason's move is also a helpless move. Over the past thousands of years, with the continuous advancement of spiritual civilization, the continuous intensification of human activities, the turmoil of the continent, and the destruction of the elements on the continent by constant wars, a large number of items and plants have disappeared from the continent. In ancient times, various potions, plants and ores were almost everywhere on the continent, but the profession of elixir had not yet emerged. People did not yet understand the value of these items. When the profession of elixir really emerged, a large number of species have already become extinct. This is a tragedy for the elixir medicine master, the #1 profession in the continent. Jason's eyes were fixed on the crimson liquid in front of him. His mental power, which had been expanded countless times by the auxiliary potion, was constantly sensing the elemental changes in the crimson liquid in front of him. Suddenly, a strong force of fire elements surged out from the crimson liquid, instantly filling the entire laboratory. Immediately, a dazzling red light suddenly spread out from the liquid. Jason's expression suddenly changed. Before he could react, cracks quickly appeared on the reacting crystal bottle. The crystal bottle, specially made by Jason and capable of withstanding a full blow from a 9th-level powerhouse, appeared on the surface of the crystal bottle. It exploded instantly. The dazzling red light was like a big, devouring mouth, instantly enveloping Jason's entire body. Boom! A shocking loud noise sounded, and the entire laboratory on the top of Halloween Mountain was reduced to ruins. Thick black mushroom clouds rolled up, rising up from the top of Halloween Mountain, and towered into the sky. Yunxiao felt the drastic changes in the entire Halloween Mountain. Alexander the Great and others who were at the foot of the Halloween Mountain, who had not yet gone far, suddenly had panic on their faces. An hour later, Alexander the Great of the Spirit Do Empire sent out a notice to the entire continent through the spiritual communication centers set up across the continent. The only 9th-level elixir Saint Master in the continent, the top powerhouse in the continent, was Saint Master Jason, who is known as the #1 person in the mainland today and a once-in-a-millennium genius in the spiritual world, died due to an experimental accident while conducting experiments in his own laboratory at Halloween Mountain at noon today. He was 27 years old. Saint Master Jason is the founder of the technological stream in the elixir world, a pioneer in spiritual power research theory, and a scholar who enjoys the admiration of countless people in the mainland. His life is a life of dedication and a great life. Saint Master Jason's death is a huge loss to the elixir world, a huge loss to the empire, a huge loss to the continent, and a huge loss to human civilization. Jason, wake up, what's wrong with you? Jason, don't scare me. Wake up. In the elixir laboratory of the Sith Academy of Spiritual Power, there was a handsome man about 16 or 17 years old with blonde hair. The boy was looking anxiously at a black-haired boy about the same age as him lying on the ground in front of him, and around the blonde boy, there were also a group of boys and girls of the same age surrounding him. Give me, why are you squeezing? Your dad is in front of you. This is an open class on elixir medicine experiments in the elixir department. There are almost 150 students in the entire laboratory. At once everyone gathered around. What's going on? What's going on? I'm not sure. It seems that Jason from class 2 suddenly passed out while doing experiments. Jason? Which Jason? It can't be the famous college student. A waste, right? Is he the same Jason who has been studying in the college for more than 2 years and has not passed a semester examination in the past 2 years? That's him. I seem to have heard that if he gets a pass next time, if you still fail the assessment, you will become the first student in the history of the Sith Spiritual Power Academy to be expelled because you have never failed the assessment, and it seems that there will be an assessment tomorrow. It's really pitiful. There were bursts of noise coming from around. Words of ridicule and pity continued to reach the ears of the blonde boy in the crowd. Shut up. The blonde boy turned his head suddenly and roared like a roar. Do you guys still have a sense of public morality? Someone go and call the staff of the college's infirmary. Because of anxiety and anger, the blonde boy's originally handsome and fair face was now covered in sweat and flushed. Carrot, what is there for you to protect this loser? You are a top student in the academy. Having reached the 9th level of spiritual power, you are only a few steps away from becoming a first-level spiritual disciple and officially graduating from the academy. Your elixir science has reached the 5th level of elixir. Jason's strength has been at the 5th level for 2 years, and his elixir science is only at the elixir level 1. He is not even qualified to carry your shoes." A young man at the front let out a burst of mocking laughter, causing a burst of laughter around him. "Shut your stinky mouth, otherwise, I won't mind tearing it in half." Carrot looked at the young man coldly, with murderous intent on his face. The young man was stunned by Carrot's eyes, and his laughter stopped. There was a hint of fear on his face, and he did not dare to say a word. Even though he has reached the 8th level of spiritual power, he is nothing in front of Carrot, who is famous in the academy. Carrot didn't care, and just slapped the black-haired boy's cheek gently with his hand, trying to wake him up. "Mr. Klein is here, everyone, go back quickly," someone in the crowd suddenly shouted, and the entire crowd of onlookers dispersed in an instant. They all ran towards their experimental tables, and then hurriedly raised their arms in front of them. Experimental equipment. What's going on? A voice as clear and sweet as an oriole sounded at the door of the laboratory. Feeling the chaotic atmosphere in the laboratory that had not yet completely settled, there was a hint of sullenness in his tone. "Mr. Klein, you're here. Jason doesn't know what happened. He suddenly fainted while doing experiments just now." Hearing the sound coming from the door, Carrot raised his head anxiously, but there was a hopeful color in his eyes as if he had found his backbone. What appeared in front of Carrot was a beautiful woman with long fiery red hair. On her breakable snow-white skin, she had a pair of smart blue eyes, giving her an infinite charm and impeccable face. Below, she is wearing a fiery red robe. Although her body is almost completely covered by the robe, the graceful curves that are occasionally exposed can still make people feel what a perfect body is under the robe. "Carrot, Jason, it's you two again." Looking at the various experimental instruments and medicines that were neatly arranged on the two people's tables and not moved at all, Klein showed a sneer on his face. "You two, if he wants to act, he should act more realistically, but he pretends to be dizzy. Let me see if he is still dizzy now." Klein thrust his right hand forward slightly, chanted a few obscure characters in his mouth, and a green line ray of light suddenly emerged from between the 5 fingers of Klein's right hand. Immediately, there was a burst of energy fluctuations in the air, a green light flashed, and a water ball the size of a basin appeared out of thin air in front of Klein's right hand, heading towards Jason's head whizzed away as he lay on the ground. "Teacher Klein, bang." When he saw Klein's movements, Carrot shouted something bad in his heart, but Klein's movements were too fast, and before he could shout as he exited, the water ball hit Jason directly in the face. "Teacher Klein, we are not acting this time." Jason really passed out. Carrot cast an innocent look at Klein speechlessly. Before Carrot could finish speaking, Jason, who had been unconscious on the ground, suddenly sat up, wiped his face hard, and looked around. "Which guy used water polo to hit me?" Jason jumped up from the ground. After seeing the situation around him, the anger in his eyes quickly disappeared, and he was full of surprise. Okay. Klein sneered twice. "Carrot, Jason, it's you two again. You two haven't started today's experiment yet. I remind you too, if you don't do it after class, if the two of you fail to complete the experiment assigned today, you two will have no chance of passing the elixir experiment class this semester." While Klein was speaking, Jason, who was standing by with a look of surprise on his face, was at this moment. He was carefully looking at his surroundings. What appeared in Jason's eyes were some boys and girls who were only 17 or 18 years old. At this moment, they were standing in pairs in front of the tables. Some were clumsy and holding the elixir instruments on the table in front of them, carefully. They were making arrangements, and from their eyes that occasionally secretly glanced here, Jason felt a trace of undisguised schadenfreude. A handsome young man with blonde hair was standing cautiously to his left, lowering his head as if he had done something wrong. His 2 lively little eyes secretly looked forward from time to time, and then glanced at the 2 people standing in front of him. After looking at the red-haired beauty, he quickly withdrew his gaze. Feeling Jason's gaze, the young man blinked secretly at Jason, and then pretended to listen carefully to the teachings. "This seems to be a classroom?" The elixir laboratory of the Sith Academy of Spiritual Power. No, isn't it my own laboratory in Halloween Mountain? Something suddenly popped up in Jason's mind, and the chaotic memories made Jason's consciousness a little blurry. Jason, looking at the familiar yet unfamiliar environment in front of him, a large number of chaotic memories continued to entangle in Jason's mind, and finally became clear bit by bit. In Jason's memory, as the recognized first person in the mainland, the chief elixir master in the mainland, and the only 9th-level elixir master in the mainland, he should be doing his own research in his laboratory at Halloween Mountain. The most severe challenge in life is to prepare the legendary holy level elixir, the liquid of the god of fire. The experiment failed in the end, and Jason's last memory was only a huge explosion. He lost consciousness in an instant. When he woke up, he had become an ordinary student in the elixir department of the Sith Psychic Academy in the Kingdom of Orlando. Jason, this student has the same name as himself, but from his memory, Jason only saw playfulness, dozing off in class, fighting, and giving up on himself in the year 2230 of the spiritual fighting calendar. According to Jason's memories of his previous life, now there are still nearly 3,000 years away from the era of Jason's previous life. Because of the explosion of his experiment, he was reborn into the body of an inferior being 3,000 years ago. This kind of thing is very difficult for Jason, a strong man standing among the pyramids on the mainland. For readers, they all feel a little unbelievable. Now, you too must carefully complete the experiment assigned today, in front of me. The fire element basic liquid is one of the most basic solutions in potions. If I find out that you made a mistake in your operation, then you too can't even think of getting out of class safely today. Yes, Teacher Klein. After hearing the instructions from the beautiful red-haired teacher, the young man standing next to Jason responded with some uneasiness, frowning and looking at the instruments on the table in front of him. Fire element basic fluid. Carrot carefully picked up a bottle of transparent liquid in an Erlenmeyer flask on the table with his left hand and muttered to himself, the first step in preparing the fire element basic fluid. It should be mixed with the non-attributed elemental liquid and that Martian or extract. With an excited scream, Carrot immediately picked up a bottle of crimson solution on the table, and then quickly poured the liquid in the conical flask in his left hand into the crimson solution. Wait a minute. After seeing Carrot's actions, Klein's expression suddenly changed, and he immediately let out a loud cry. He stretched out his hand to grab the Erlenmeyer flask containing the attributeless elemental liquid on Carrot's left hand, and there was a bottle beside him. Jason, who was in confusion, inadvertently frowned slightly after seeing Carrot's movements. Although Carrot's movements immediately paused after hearing Klein's shout, and Klein also immediately stopped Carrot, but Carrot's previous action was too fast, and a wisp of colorless elemental liquid without attributes had flowed into the Mars or refining liquid. Klein's face changed color slightly, and his outstretched right hand instantly changed from grasping to sweeping away the bottle of Mars mineral solution in Carrot's hand, and at the same time, he hit Carrot hard on the chest with a palm, knocking Carrot away. The whole person pushed hard. Bang! A slight explosion suddenly erupted from the bottle of Mars or extract that was swept away by Klein. The crystal bottle containing the Mars or extract exploded in an instant, and a crimson mist spread at an extremely fast speed. It spread in an instant, covering the direction where Carrot was standing. Oops! Klein exhaled heavily. Just as he was about to yell at Carrot, who was lying on the ground, something suddenly occurred to his mind, and his eyes hurriedly looked in the direction where Jason was before. As a third-level low-level elixir master, Klein knew clearly that the mist generated by the explosion of the previous doses of Mars or extract would definitely cover Jason, who was standing next to Carrot. Inside, in the previous rush, Klein only had time to push Carrot away, the initiator of the incident, but he forgot about Jason, who was standing aside. Klein knew that the mist produced by the explosion after mixing the non-attributed elemental liquid and the Martian or extract is not too powerful, but if it touches the body, the high temperature generated by the instantaneous release of the fire element can definitely kill a person. The human body suffered minor burns. His eyes fell on the place where Jason was standing. Klein, who had no hope in his heart at first and just wanted to send Jason to the hospital infirmary for treatment as soon as possible, suddenly became confused after seeing the scene in front of him. Stunned. Jason, after being pushed to the ground by Klein, who was still frightened at this moment, also looked at the place where Jason was with an anxious face. What if he accidentally killed Jason? If he was hurt, would never forgive himself. At this moment, all the students in the laboratory were startled when the explosion occurred and looked here. Like Klein, and everyone else in the laboratory looked at the explosion. Behind the place where Jason originally stood, he also froze there for a moment. I saw that Jason, who was standing next to before the explosion, was no longer where he was. Instead, he stood expressionless and calmly about 2 meters away from the center of the explosion, in front of Jason. A few centimeters away, traces of crimson mist were floating there, but they never touched Jason's body. Looking at the almost mature look on Jason's young face, Klein suddenly had a strange idea in his mind. Jason in front of him seemed to have already calculated that the crimson mist could only expand at most. When he reached a few centimeters in front of him, it seemed like he could no longer move forward. How is this possible? Coincidence? Yes, it must be a coincidence. Shaking his head gently, Klein couldn't help but smile to himself. Where did he think of it before? Even as a third-level elixir master at best, he could only roughly judge that the range of the mist spread was about 2 meters, not to mention Jason, who was usually the least serious in his class and only played and dozed in class. In Klein's mind, it would be extraordinary for Jason to know the principle that when a non-attributed element liquid is poured directly into the Martian or refining liquid, it will explode. Now, you two, leave the laboratory immediately and go to my office. Wait, Klein, who suppressed the anger in his heart and regained consciousness, said in a deep voice to and Jason with a livid face. I don't know how many times I emphasized during the theory class that when mixing the non-attributed element liquid and the Martian or extract, the non-attributed element liquid cannot be poured directly into the Martian or extract. Even before the experiment started, I also made a special point. He demonstrated it once, but the two guys in front of him didn't know where their thoughts were, and they still couldn't remember it. Just now, they almost caused a teaching accident in his class. This made Klein feel how could he not angry. Yes, Teacher Klein, seeing that Jason was fine, who was relieved, lowered his head and responded helplessly. He made a look to Jason and walked towards the door of the laboratory. The previous explosion made couldn't help but feel I broke out in a cold sweat, and I still have lingering fears, and my legs are slightly weak. Jason on the side ignored eyes and still stood there, staring motionlessly at the various potions and instruments on the table in front of him that were not affected by the explosion. Jason, didn't you hear what I said? And all of you, please continue to do experiments. Seeing that Jason was still there after he finished his instructions, Klein couldn't help but increase his anger. With his voice, 2 crescent-shaped willow eyebrows jumped twice at the same time as he spoke. Seeing Klein's dancing thin eyebrows, the students watching the excitement all withdrew their gazes and began to conduct their own experiments carefully. They were very familiar with Teacher Klein and knew that Teacher Klein's eyebrows were in her eyes. When he is really angry, he will jump involuntarily. Mr. Klein, the main content of this afternoon's experimental class is to prepare the fire element basic liquid. Listening to Klein, who lowered his voice because of anger, Jason slowly raised his head, his eyes a little dazed. As he raised his eyes, he gradually became calmer, and finally met Klein's suppressed anger. The originally empty eyes suddenly became firm and dull, without a trace of emotion. Yes. For some reason, after seeing Jason's eyes, the angry Klein unconsciously responded. Jason didn't speak, but straightened his body even more, looking at the instruments on the experimental table in front of him. His originally dull eyes became extremely solemn in the next moment, just like those in the elixir in front of him at this moment. It is an extremely common instrument in refining. It is like the most precious treasure in the world, full of piety. Who? He breathed out softly, and Jason's body moved the next moment. Taking a slight step forward, Jason picked up the non-attributed elemental liquid on the table and slowly poured it into a mixing bottle on the table. Jason poured it very slowly, without being arrogant or impetuous. The transparent non-attributed elemental liquid was floating in the air. The middle was pulled into a long filament. Under the sunlight transmitted through the laboratory window, it reflected the crystal light, which was extremely elegant. Smelling the unique faint smell of the pure, non-attributed elemental liquid in the air, Jason gently rotated the preparation bottle with his right hand, and slowly rubbed his fingertips on the surface of the bottle, feeling the feeling. The look in his eyes seemed to contain a trace of aftertaste and a trace of enjoyment. In the eyes of Klein and others, Jason, who was gently turning the bottle in front of him at this moment, was like a veteran who had been away from the battlefield for many years and once again picked up the sword he had wielded countless times. That look, with a trace of memory, the feeling of caressing the bottle, which is both unfamiliar and familiar. They are obviously two opposite feelings, but they are integrated so perfectly. They are natural and natural without any tweaking. After the non-attributed elemental liquid filled up 1/3 of the volume of the prepared bottle, Jason stopped pouring the elemental liquid. He gently put his left hand on the bottle containing the Martian or extract and flipped it over. Klein and others, who had no reaction at all, only saw a blur in front of their eyes. A ball of Mars or extract about half the size of a fist had flown out of the bottle mouth, and the bottle containing the Mars or extract was at this moment, but it remained in its original place, as if it had not been moved at all. Staring at the ball of Mars or extract in midair, Jason's eyes flashed. His right hand suddenly turned into a black phantom and passed over the experimental table. He took the preparation bottle in his hand and pointed towards the ball of Mars or extract in midair. Cover away. The high-speed rotating preparation bottle kept flying in the palm of Jason's right hand, forming a white phantom. The mouth of the bottle, which was originally not large, seemed to become bigger and bigger during the high-speed rotation. When it got closer to the Mars mine extract liquid when it came out, it was already the same as the half-fist-sized Mars or extract, and the Mars or extract was wrapped in it all at once. Bang! A subtle explosion sound came, and the white light that was flying in Jason's right hand suddenly turned into a red disk, like a bloody sun, emitting dazzling light in Jason's right hand. The red sun was shining brightly, and Jason was like the gods who controlled everything in the world. Although the red sun was flying, it was always firmly sucked into Jason's right hand and could not leave even an inch. Surprised sounds resounded one after another in the laboratory, and there were even the crisp sounds of some bottles falling. Obviously, Jason's action attracted the attention of everyone in the laboratory, who usually thought they were very fond of Jason. The eyes of those who knew him all showed shock and confusion at this moment. What shocked everyone even more was what came next. While Jason's raised right hand was rotating the preparation bottle at high speed, his left hand was on the experimental table to put some other medicines needed to prepare the fire element base liquid. When Jason's left hand touched the potions, he moved slightly. In the eyes of everyone's incomprehensible surprise, lumps of various liquid potions of different sizes splashed out from the mouth of the instrument bottle and fell into Jason's eyes. On the red disc that was rotating at high speed in his right hand, he merged into it and disappeared. All the students in the laboratory were staring at Jason's hands, trying to see how Jason did this, but no one could see the slightest clue. The only person present who could see Jason's movements clearly was Klein, a third-level elixir master. In Klein's spiritual consciousness, she discovered that Jason's body was moving irregularly throughout the process. It stopped shaking, but the amplitude of the shaking was extremely small, and every muscle on Jason's body was constantly contracting and relaxing during the shaking, matching the speed of the high-speed rotating preparation bottle on his right hand, reaching a perfect balance. When Jason put his left hand on the other potion bottles on the table, they all made a rolling and swinging action. It was just that this action was too fast, which gave people the feeling that the potion bottles had not moved, and according to the rolling and throwing, the amplitude and speed of the movement are different, and the amount and speed of the thrown-out medicine are also different, but they all fly into the mouth of the high-speed rotating preparation bottle when it reaches Jason's right side. The whole process sounds extremely simple, but the actual operation is extremely difficult. If the body control and muscle coordination are slightly uncoordinated during the entire process, the result will fall short. At least as far as Klein knows, this kind of the miraculous technique was something she had never seen or heard of before. Laugh. Just when everyone was staring blankly at the crimson disc on Jason's right hand, a black phantom passed by, and Jason's free left hand joined the battle group like lightning. Before anyone could react, the preparation bottle that was spinning at high speed on the palm of Jason's right hand has disappeared. A bottle of dark red solution flowing with dazzling red light appeared on the experimental table in front of Jason, giving people a profound and mysterious aura that attracted people's attention. "Mr. Klein, I have completed the experimental class homework you assigned. I think I can go back." Without waiting for Klein to answer, Jason had already gently moved the bottle of crimson solution to Klein in front of him and then walked straight out of the laboratory. Along the way, all the classmates Jason passed by were stunned and stepped aside. They looked at Jason's back disappearing at the door, with dull faces. This Klein looked at the bottle of crimson solution in front of her in shock. In her spiritual consciousness, the bottle of crimson solution was emitting faint and inaudible waves. The unique elemental breath of the fire element, the extremely pure fire element breath, reveals the identity of this bottle of solution fire element basic liquid. In the elixir world, if a bottle of fire element basic liquid emits a lighter elemental breath, it means that the fire element in this bottle of fire element basic liquid is more restrained, the purity is greater, and the relative grade is higher. The elemental aura emitted by the bottle of fire element basic liquid in front of Klein at this moment is almost inaudible. This grade of fire element basic liquid was only prepared by Klein once before by his mentor. It was the only time he saw it. Later, Klein heard from his mentor that the preparation was one of the most perfect preparations in his life. However, what really shocked Klein was not this. In the elixir world, the fire element base liquid is one of the most basic potions in elixir science, and the preparation of the fire element base liquid is also one of several basic experiments that must be mastered in the teaching of elixir. This is not only because the fire element base liquid is the most widely used potion in the mainland, nor is it just because the production of the fire element base liquid is one of the simplest potions in the production of elixir medicine. The most important reason is that the production process of the elemental base liquid includes the mixing and matching principles of a variety of basic pharmaceuticals, as well as multiple basic operating steps in elixir medicine. It includes the fusion, quenching, extraction, separation, and other steps of various pharmaceuticals. It is also a typical tutorial for training and learning spiritual knowledge to analyze the synthesis degree of pharmaceuticals. In Jason's operation just now, Klein didn't see any of the steps at all. All she saw was Jason mixing multiple potions. What shocked Klein even more was that in the entire previous operation, during the production process, she did not feel even a trace of spiritual consciousness released by Jason. You must know that spiritual awareness is indispensable and the most important in the production of spiritual potions. It is the most important thing for a spiritual medicine master to judge the degree of fusion of two or more different potions during the reaction process. A means was that Jason just now carrot on the side looked at the fire element basic fluid placed on the table. He was the most familiar with Jason in the entire academy. At this time, his eyes flashed. But he couldn't help but feel a little confused. By the way, where are the Jasons? Klein recovered from the shock and took a closer look. Jason, who was standing in front of him before, was nowhere to be seen at this moment. "Teacher Klein, Jason has just gone out." "Out? You all continue to do experiments." Today everyone must master the preparation of this fire element basic liquid. Klein resisted the urge to rush out to find Jason, and let out a trembling breath. She knew, the experimental class this afternoon is not over yet. As a competent elixir teacher, there are still more than 100 students who need her care here. After Jason prepared the fire element basic liquid for Klein and left those words, he left. At this moment, he had inadvertently walked out of the gate of the Sith Spiritual Power Academy and was wandering aimlessly in Tallinn. On the streets of the city. Feeling some pain and trembling hands, and thinking of the previous preparation, Jason shook his head slightly. His current body is really too weak. The fire element basic liquid prepared previously is the most basic elixir in the elixir world. By preparing this elixir, Jason in his previous life could easily prepare the fire element. The highest level of complete restraint, and the previous bottle of fire element basic liquid, although he had tried his best, still failed to achieve perfection. And from the feeling coming from his hands at this moment, Jason knew that the muscle fibers on his arms had been slightly torn and damaged from the previous intense preparation. This was fundamental to Jason in his previous life. Unimaginable. The streets are busy with traffic and people coming and going, accompanied by bursts of noisy people. However, in Jason's heart, no matter how noisy the world around him is, in his eyes at this moment, there is not even the slightest color. Everything seemed like a dream to him. Huh? He didn't know how long he had been walking aimlessly on the street. Suddenly, Jason's eyes flashed with a glimmer of light, and he landed on a majestic building not far in front of him. This was a European-style building made of marble. The whole building looks extremely solemn and majestic. What's strange is that there is constant traffic elsewhere on the street, but in the small square in front of this building, very few people pass by. There are only a few very luxuriously decorated carriages parked there, adding to the overall gray tone. The building is painted with a few bright colors, adding a bit of dignity. Some pedestrians passed by the small square from a distance, looking at the building with eyes full of respect and solemnity. Jason's eyes rested on the stone badge above the door of the building. On the badge was carved a horizontal scroll, and on top of the scroll, there was an angular spiritual core leaning against a flower filled on the conical flask of the elixir. The entire emblem looks lifelike, and one look at it shows that this carving is at least the work of a master sculptor. That is the symbol of a major force in the entire continent, the emblem of the Medicine Master Guild. Unconsciously, Jason slowly walked into the Elixir Masters Union in front of him. In his previous life, Jason was the only 9th-level elixir master in the mainland and devoted his life to the elixir science. When I arrived at the Elixir Masters Union in front of me, I was inevitably touched. Although the door of the Medicine Masters Guild looks very grand from the outside, it is not very grand. But once you walk in, your eyes suddenly open up, and a huge space like a small square appears in front of Jason. It is empty. There are not many people in the hall, but the area is huge. Everyone in the hall was busy with their own affairs in an orderly manner. There was a faint smell of elixirs mixed with various elixirs floating in the air. The familiar smell brought Jason's thoughts back to past. The layout of the Elixir Guild in this era has not changed much from what it was 3,000 years ago. I remember that when I first entered the Elixir Guild for the 2nd level elixir certification, I was completely frightened by the huge hall. Welcome to the Tallinn City Spiritual Medicine Masters Guild. A soft female voice came from in front of Jason. Jason suddenly came back from his memories and looked up. A short-haired woman in professional attire stood in front of him. Unknowingly, Jason had arrived at the service desk in the center of the hall. "Hello, do you need any help?" Kathleen stood in front of Jason with a faint smile on her face. In fact, Kathleen had already noticed Jason from the first step he entered the Elixir Guild. Although the young man in front of her looked to be only about 17 or 18 years old, his face had not yet completely taken off his child. She looked so childish, and the clothes she wore were not very flashy, and seemed a bit casual, but Kathleen didn't ignore her at all. The elixir master is a very noble profession on the mainland, and some elixir masters do not pay much attention to certain aspects of themselves. Just like Master Saha, the president of the trade union, he is wearing a uniform every time he sees him. A rather shabby robe, but no one dared to look down upon him in the slightest. Although the Elixir Masters Union does not restrict anyone's entry, not everyone dares to come in. Even those low-level elixir masters will be a little cautious in their expressions and movements when they enter the union, and this person in front of them when the young man came in, Kathleen felt a casual and relaxed look in his eyes. It was as if the Elixir Guild was his home, without any restraint or fear at all. This kind of look can only be felt by Kathleen in the eyes of some high-level elixir masters who are quite respected in Talon City. Perhaps he was a disciple of a certain elixir master. Although she had never met Jason, Kathleen had already secretly marked Jason in her heart. "You're welcome, I was just taking a look." Jason responded lightly, his eyes moving randomly throughout the hall. The smile on Kathleen's face became even brighter. Not everyone could have this casual look. If you encounter any doubts or troubles in the process of preparing elixirs and need help, the help area is in the third area on the left side of the hall. If you need to purchase any materials or items, the trading area is the second area on the right side of the hall. There are also information release areas, potion display areas, potion preparation areas, and other areas. There are instructions on the notice boards in the hall. Based on her guess, Kathleen pointed to the young man in front of her. He gave a few reminders about the reason for coming to the Medicine Master Guild, always with a professional smile on his face. "You can browse and wander around at will. If you have any questions, you can come to me. I am always at the service desk in the lobby." Looking around the huge hall, casually, Jason unconsciously came to the help area of the Panacea Master Guild. Seeing Jason staying in the Union's help area, Kathleen retracted her secretly observing gaze. As expected, it was just as she had guessed. This should be a young elixir who encountered trouble in the process of preparing the elixir. She withdrew her gaze and said, after calming down, Kathleen began to busy herself with the work at hand. She still had a lot of things to finish today. What appeared in front of Jason were rows of huge metal cabinets, almost as tall as a person. On the board above the metal cabinets, lines of information were floating, and in the middle of the metal cabinets, there were hanging pens and letters. Stack paper. Walking to the nearest metal cabinet, Jason carefully looked at the information floating on the panel of the metal cabinet. In the process of preparing the ablation agent, when the sulfur solution is added, the violent reaction and the large amount of spiritual elements will be released, which will make it difficult to grasp the extent of the reaction of the spiritual consciousness to the solution, and it is impossible to control the rhythm of the addition of bisulfuric acid. It is necessary to how can we effectively solve this problem? Can it be solved in the form of the potion itself? The ablation agent is a second-level high-grade spiritual potion. Spiritual potions are generally divided into upper, middle, and lower grades at the same level, while spiritual medicine masters are at the same level. The levels are also divided into 3 levels, high, middle, and low, corresponding to the 3 levels of elixir. If a second-level elixir master can prepare 3 or more second-level high-quality elixirs, then this elixir master can be called a second-level advanced elixir master. The ablation agent is an auxiliary elixir specially used to remove impurities from the surface of the excavated spiritual power minerals. It is one of the simplest second-level high-grade elixirs. Its production process is very difficult for a second-level elixir practitioner. It is not complicated. The only difficulty is that after adding the sulfur liquid during the preparation process, if the spiritual consciousness has not reached the second-level advanced level, it will be difficult to grasp the timing of adding the sulfur solution, resulting in the preparation fail. Obviously, the elixir master who asked this question is a second-level elixir master who has not yet reached the second-level advanced elixir. He wants to rely on trickery so that he who has not reached the second-level advanced elixir master can prepare a second-level high-grade elixir. the dissolving agent of the potion. At the end of the question, he also proposed a solution from another perspective of the preparation of the elixir, but it was obvious that he had not found a solution himself. Seeing this question, Jason couldn't help but feel a little dazed. Some things in the past suddenly appeared in Jason's mind like a movie. In this world, a spiritual medicine master is an extremely noble profession. To become a spiritual medicine master, you must have extremely high talents. One of the essential items is to have strong spiritual consciousness. The talent of spiritual consciousness is innate. It is not only the most important thing for spiritual medicine masters, but also the most important thing for spiritual masters. The strength of spiritual consciousness represents the strength of the ability to communicate with the spiritual elements between heaven and earth. Spiritual consciousness can be continuously improved through acquired practice. If a person does not improve his spiritual consciousness through continuous practice, then he will not be able to become a spiritual master, nor can he become a spiritual medicine master. In his previous life, his parents died in a war. Jason, who has been an orphan since he was a child, had a dream of becoming a powerful spiritual master. However, after testing, it was found that Jason's innate spiritual consciousness was very weak and he did not have the talent to become a spiritual master. Knowing the outcome, Jason did not give up on his dream. Even though he knew it was impossible, he still resolutely embarked on the path of cultivating a spiritual master. However, after 5 years of extremely hard training, after countless blood and tears shed, and countless hardships endured, Jason's spiritual consciousness is still only at the second level of spiritual power. Jason completely understands that no matter how hard he works in this life, he will never become a spiritual disciple of even the first level. Jason, who gave up the path of a spiritual master, did not give up on himself. Instead, he embarked on another, more difficult path of a spiritual medicine master. He was good at observing and found that when preparing any spiritual medicine, in addition to the inherent energy elements of the solution, Jason, in addition to changes, the external form, color, smell, temperature, density, touch and other factors of the solution are also constantly changing. In this aspect of potion reaction, Jason showed amazing talent. He only had spiritual power and second-level spiritual consciousness. He relied on his weak induction of elemental reactions and his grasp of the physical form of the potion to continuously research and prepare a higher-level elixir. When he was 26 years old, he became the only 9th-level elixir master on the mainland at that time. The preparation method he developed based on the changes in the physical form of the medicine pointed out a new path for all elixirs on the mainland, and Jason was also praised by the Mainland Elixirs Union as the founder of the technical stream in the elixir industry. As a spiritual medicine master, Jason's goal is naturally the 10th-level medicine god, but Jason also understands that he has reached the end of his path as a spiritual medicine master. After so many years of practice, when Jason was 27 years old, his spiritual consciousness was only at the 5th level of spiritual power. The technical flow he created could only bring him to the level of a 9th-level elixir master, but you can't take him to attack the realm of the 10th-level medicine god. The realm of God is a restricted area. Jason understands that it is a realm that he can only attack if he possesses 9th-level spiritual consciousness and his own miraculous technical skills. As a 9th-level elixir master, Jason has always been a deep regret in his heart even though he has become the number 1 person in the mainland elixir world, but he cannot attack the field of the 10th-level elixir god. In the process of preparing the ablation agent, after adding the sulfur solution, a fine oily layer will appear in the solution in the preparation bottle. When this oily layer reaches the middle of the preparation bottle during the floating process, that is, it's the best time to add some biscuit water. After picking up the pen on the metal cabinet and writing this sentence on a piece of paper, Jason habitually signed J in the signature area. Then put the paper into the delivery hole in the middle of the metal cabinet, and looked at the information column on the next metal cabinet. By the time Jason came out of the Alchemist's Guild, the evening sun had already dyed Talon City in a golden color at dusk. Unknowingly, Jason stayed at the Medicine Master Guild for a whole afternoon. The soft golden light of the setting sun shone into Jason's eyes. Compared with when he entered at noon, the confusion in his eyes had long disappeared, leaving only a trace of eagerness to try. Since in the previous life, I could not become a powerful spiritual master because of my lack of talent, and because of my spiritual consciousness, I could not attack the realm of the 10th level medicine god for the rest of my life. In my previous life, I had no worries at all, but these two things have always been in my heart. Eternal pain, but now that God has given me another chance, isn't it just allowing me to fulfill the dream that I couldn't fulfill in my previous life? With a faint smile on his face, Jason walked back towards the Sith Spiritual Power Academy. His thin body, which was not straight under the sunlight, suddenly gave people an inexplicable tall and firm feeling. Xiao Bo has been working in the Elixir Union of Talon City for more than a year. As a senior who has reached the 9th level of the Elixir Department of the Sith Academy of Spiritual Power, Xiao Bo is only one level away from becoming a real elixir. He became a first-level low-grade elixir disciple, thus joining the ranks of the lofty elixir masters. Now, Xiao Bo's work in the Talon City Spiritual Medicine Masters Union is just odd jobs that don't pay much. In fact, with Xiao Bo's identity, there is no need to do such things anymore, even if the place where he works is the lofty Elixir Masters Union. Every elixir master is an extremely precious asset. As a 9th level elixir apprentice, Xiao Bo has already been able to prepare a lot of basic elixirs. What he lacks is to prepare a bottle of real first-level low-grade elixirs on his own. The experience and ability of elixirs are a profession that extremely requires talent and accumulation, and in the Elixirs Union, the atmosphere here alone can benefit Xiao Bo a lot, which is why Xiao Bo has the 9th level of elixirs. The reason why I still work here. Xiao Bo had just finished replenishing some of the public medicines consumed today in the Union's preparation test area. Now he was standing in front of the metal cabinet in the help area and started his last task of the day. The extra answers are taken out and sent to the service desk, and the publisher of the information is notified. Skillfully opening the first metal cabinet, Xiao Bo glanced casually inside. He was about to close the metal cabinet with his right hand as usual, but suddenly stopped halfway. In the corner of the metal cabinet, an answer sheet was quietly lying there. As a platform for distributing help information, the help area is not very useful based on Xiao Bo's understanding of the Elixir Union over the past year. In fact, although everyone will have various problems during the preparation process, various questions, but most of these questions are the mistakes made by the seekers themselves during the preparation process. Every elixir master can get answers to these mistakes from communication with his companions. The problems that actually appear in the help area are basically the above are some problems that have no final conclusion or solutions. Therefore, Xiao Bo rarely finds the answer paper in the metal cabinet, and once he finds the answer, there is basically a high probability that he can solve it. It is rare for an elixir to cheat with fake answers. After all, it is recorded in the Elixir Guild. Gently taking out the answer sheet, Xiao Bo registered it on the registration form in his hand, then came to the second metal cabinet, opened it, and just when Xiao Bo had to get used to it, he closed it again. When he was getting out of the metal cabinet, another answer sheet lay at the bottom of the metal cabinet and appeared in front of Xiao Bo. What's going on today? Did a master of elixirs come from the Union? Or did President Saha suddenly become interested and wander around the help area today? Xiao Bo muttered slightly, and after taking notes, the third metal cabinet was opened. An answer sheet, lying quietly at the bottom of the cabinet, appeared in front of Xiao Bo's eyes. Xiao Bo, when Jason returned to the academy, the sky was already a little dark, so he ate casually in the school cafeteria. After grabbing something, Jason immediately returned to his dormitory. In the Sith Spiritual Power Academy, according to the amount of tuition paid by the academy, the dormitories are divided into ordinary dormitories for 6 people, intermediate dormitories for 4 people, and high-end dormitories for 2 people in one room. In this life, Jason's father is an authentic nobleman of the kingdom with the title of Baron. He serves as the mayor of a small town near the spiritual Beast Mountain range in the kingdom. Although his family is not very wealthy, it is still well-to-do. Therefore, Jason's dormitory is located in the high-end dormitory of the Sith Spiritual Power Academy District. Pushing open the door of his dormitory, looking at the familiar utensils and furnishings in front of him, Jason let out a breath and sat cross-legged on his bed. A compelling light suddenly appeared in his eyes, and then he closed them gently. "Go up. Then, let's get started," he whispered softly and crossed his hands into a clasp. Jason's whole body suddenly became silent, and his whole soul fell into emptiness. After finding his goal, Jason didn't waste any time when he returned to the dormitory. What he needs to understand most now is the state of his body at the moment. In his previous life, he was finally able to achieve the status of Master of Spiritual Medicine through hard work. Ranking is also closely related to the persistence in his character. Breathing lightly, Jason, who had profound cultivation experience in his previous life, was slowly entering what the spiritual master world calls the state of trance. In Jason's feeling, the various sensations in the body parts are slowly dissipating as time goes by. Whether it is smell, vision, touch or other sensations, they are all moving away one by one, and the whole world is also slowly dissipating. Slowly changing from bright to dark, until it is completely dark. This darkness is not the darkness brought by vision, but a state of emptiness and darkness entered by closing the 6 senses of the body. If a person wants to become a spiritual master, he must first be able to sense the spiritual elements between heaven and earth. If he wants to sense the spiritual elements between heaven and earth, he must enter a state of trance, which blocks his own 6 senses. Let your mind be empty, without any thoughts or ideas. People with high understanding can enter this state under the guidance of their ancestors after a few days of exploration, while some people with poor understanding may not be able to enter this state of being unable to think without thinking no matter how hard they work. Middle. In the previous life, when Jason had just come into contact with meditation, it only took him nearly half a day to enter this state for the first time. In this regard, Jason had amazing talents. The only thing he lacked was a talent in spiritual awareness. Soon, Jason, who had entered a state of trance, began to explore his body in detail. After a while, after feeling the condition inside his body, Jason couldn't help but be surprised. In Jason's spiritual perception, milky white airflows, composed entirely of spiritual power, were slowly running through the 5th-level meridians in his body. What surprised Jason was that these milky white airflows were actually quite viscous. It even feels almost liquid. Before traveling through the past life, Jason was at the 5th level of spiritual power. Naturally, he was very clear about the state of 5th-level spiritual power. Under normal circumstances, the spiritual power in the body of a spiritual master who has not cultivated to the 1st-level spiritual disciple is extremely thin. Yes, among spiritual disciples, every time a person advances to a level, the spiritual power that appears in the meridians in their body is basically a light, transparent mist. After continuous practice and accumulation, the transparent aerosol in the body will slowly become thicker. When the transparent aerosol turns into light white, it will have the strength to hit the next level. Therefore, when Jason sensed that the spiritual energy in the 5th-level meridians in his body was so thick that it was like milky white liquid, even though he was well informed in his previous life, he was inevitably stunned. Pieces of somewhat broken memories appeared intermittently in Jason's mind at this moment. As the memory fragments continued to be improved, slowly, Jason understood the whole story. The original Jason was actually very good at spiritual cultivation. He is a very talented person. He was exposed to spiritual enlightenment at the age of 12. In just 1 year, he made a breakthrough from the 1st level of spiritual power and was promoted to the Sith Spiritual Power Academy on the basis of the 3rd level of spiritual power, and within half a year after he entered the academy, he broke through 2 levels in a row and soared all the way to the 5th level of spiritual power. This incident caused quite a sensation in the 6th Spiritual Power Academy at that time. However, just when all the teachers at the 6th Spiritual Power Academy were full of expectations for Jason's practice suddenly stagnated. In everyone's eyes, Jason seemed to have suddenly fallen. In the past 2 years, Jason's strength has been stuck at the 5th level of spiritual power, and has never improved at all. Jason, who had not made any progress, failed every time in the following academy assessments. In the 6th Spiritual Power Academy, students do not have a fixed graduation period. As long as they become a spiritual disciple within 10 years, they can successfully graduate from the academy. If the student does not become a spiritual disciple within 10 years, he will graduate from the academy on his own initiative. Graduation. However, the 6th Spiritual Power Academy has such a rule. If a student fails the college assessment for 2 consecutive years, he will be forcibly dismissed by the college, which is actually expelled. In history, there has never been a student who was forcibly dismissed from the academy. Jason, who had always failed the examination, was gradually dubbed by others as the greatest waste in the history of the 6th Spiritual Power Academy. On the surface, as everyone saw, Jason began to deteriorate after reaching the 5th level of spiritual power. He no longer listened carefully in class, no longer worked hard in training, and even often skipped classes, and no longer listened to others' advice. In fact, Jason has never stopped practicing hard. More than a year ago, when the 5th level spiritual power in his body condensed into light white mist for the first time, Jason began his first effort to hit the gateway of the 6th level meridians in his body. That time in his body, as soon as the 5th level spiritual power hit the entrance of the 6th level meridian, a soul-piercing pain instantly hit Jason's body. Jason didn't even have time to react. His whole body was already in a huge state. Passed out from the pain. When Jason woke up the next day, he was covered in sweat as if he had been soaked by the rain, and he felt as if he was exhausted. That time, Jason had been practicing for nearly a month before he recovered. What Jason didn't expect was that this was just the beginning of his nightmare. As the 5th level spiritual power in his body continued to condense, Jason continued to hit the level 6 meridians, but every time he came into contact with the 5th level spiritual power. The moment he reaches the 6th level meridian, a pain that pierces his bone marrow and soul will hit Jason's body in an instant. Gritting his teeth and persevering again and again, and relentlessly attacking again and again, he was rewarded with excruciating comas again and again. Jason could no longer remember how many times he had passed the level 6 barrier in the past year and a half. He only knew as he continued to practice, the spiritual power in his 5th level meridians became more and more pure and intense, but all of this was of no help to Jason. What's going on? After learning about his previous training experience, Jason couldn't help but let out a long sigh in his heart. At the same time, he was also full of doubts. In the world 3,000 years later, the spiritual master's training system has been perfected to an extremely terrifying level. The discovery and correction of various theories have made the development of spiritual masters far more powerful than in this era. Although Jason's own spiritual power level in the previous life was only level 5, not even a first-level spiritual disciple, but as he stood at the top of the pyramid of later generations as a 9th-level elixir saint master, he had never found out from any history book he had heard that a spiritual master would experience the same situation as himself during the process of impacting his meridians. In that case, let me see why my original self has never been able to break through the shackles of the 6th level of spiritual power. Jason, who didn't understand the reason, immediately stopped thinking and slowly adjusted. He recalled the extremely concentrated spiritual power in the 5th level meridians in his body. Although the memories he obtained were full of shuddering memories of hitting the 6th level meridians, as well as the fear and horror that penetrated deep into the soul, but for Jason, who has already set his goal in the Elixir Guild today, no matter what appears in front of him, he will go on without hesitation. Under Jason's mobilization, the rich 5th level spiritual power in his body was running slowly and orderly at the moment. With the strength of spiritual power in Jason's body at this moment, in fact, he can directly hit the 6th level without brewing. However, Jason still uses the skills he will master in later generations to increase the activity of spiritual power in his body and increase the chance of breakthrough. The root continuously improves the vitality of the spiritual power in one's body. Finally, after running for several cycles, the spiritual energy in Jason's body reached a peak. Without hesitation, the spiritual energy in Jason's body changed from a gentle flowing river to a roaring new river in an instant, slammed into the gateway to the 6th level. In the dormitory, Jason's motionless body, which was sitting cross-legged on the bed, suddenly trembled violently in the silence. Then Jason's eyes suddenly opened in an instant, and an invisible air flow suddenly flashed in his pupils. However, Jason had already exhaled a long breath. He squeezed his fists slightly, and a surge of power was immediately transferred from Jason's body to his fists, giving him an instant feeling of full strength, which made Jason feel the urge to punch the sky. There was a slight flash of doubt in Jason's eyes. In the previous impact, Jason entered from the 5th level to the 6th level of spiritual power without encountering any resistance at all. He did not encounter the pain in his memory at all. Status. No matter what, I finally reached the 6th level, he murmured in his mouth. Just as Jason was about to stand up, a black shadow suddenly appeared in front of Jason. Instinctively, Jason's fists that had been fully charged had already swung away at the black shadow. Ouch! After being hit by Jason's fists, the black figure suddenly let out a scream, flipped backwards, and retreated to the door of the dormitory. Damn, Jason, you are too cruel. I don't have any deep grudge against you. The black shadow, who retreated to the door, let out a complaining cry. Carrot, is that you? Jason rolled out of bed and now saw clearly the person in front of him. It was his roommate, the blonde boy Carrot, who was on the same experimental platform as him in the afternoon experimental class. Who else could it be if it wasn't me, Jason? I didn't realize that you were so cruel in your attacks. Carrot gently rubbed his arms that had received Jason's punch earlier. He gritted his teeth and was about to speak. Suddenly, as if he thought of something, he immediately looked at Jason, who was standing there calmly with doubtful eyes, and said with a hint of doubt in his tone, Jason, has your spiritual power level reached level 6? Carrot didn't pay much attention to Jason's punch before, but when he came back to his senses, he immediately noticed something was wrong. With Carrot's 9th level spiritual power, Jason, who only had a 5th level spiritual power, could not bring any harm to him even with a full-strength punch. However, Jason's previous punch, which he just instinctively threw out at will, caused his arms, which were protected by level 9 spiritual power, were in great pain. This was something that the previous Jason could not do, not to mention that the previous Jason was clearly sitting cross-legged on the bed. He nodded slightly and saw Ka-Roth's doubtful eyes, as well as the basin of water and towels placed on the table in the dormitory. Jason, who understood what Carrot was doing before, said softly, "Thank you." From the past memory, Jason, I know that the only person in the entire Sith Spiritual Power Academy who understands me is my roommate in front of me. Every time I practiced until I passed out, this roommate was the one who silently took care of me. It was precisely because understanding Jason's efforts and the pain he endured because of his cultivation, Carrot did not look down on Jason like others. TCH, what are the two of us thanking for? Are you cured? Bah, let's not talk about this, haha. It's such a big happy event, and your kid has to treat me this time. You must celebrate it properly. Now see if those guys dare to talk about you in the future. Carrot stepped forward and gave Jason a bear hug, with a heartfelt smile on his face. For Jason, Carrot's heart was full of admiration. Every time he saw Jason sitting there cross-legged because of the impact of reaching the 6th level of spiritual power, his whole body was sweating and twitching constantly because of pain. When he finally fell into coma, Carrot asked himself silently in his heart, if he had suffered such pain, could he still continue to practice like Jason and reach level 6? You need to care so much about other people's eyes. Exclamation point. Jason smiled lightly. Although he was not used to Carrot's hug, but with his 2 lifetime experiences, he could feel Carrot's friendship and care radiating from the bottom of his heart. That's right. Why should you care about those guys? But where were you this afternoon? Teacher Klein was still looking for you, but I searched for it for a long time and couldn't find it. By the way, what is that fire element basic liquid? You learned how to prepare it when you were young, but you didn't know that after you left, the whole class was stunned. Haha, now you are famous in the elixir department. Hearing Jason's words, Carrot used a somewhat unfamiliar expression. His eyes looked at Jason. When he was in the experimental class today, Carrot felt that Jason seemed a little different from before, but he couldn't find out what was different. Now, he finally saw that different. The Jason of the past was as indifferent as the Jason of today, but the Jason of the past was indifferent and could not integrate into the academy. To be precise, it was a kind of indifference and a lack of self-confidence, because he could not be promoted to level 6. The state of self-protection caused by this, but the indifference revealed in Jason's expression today was a kind of condescension, with a hint of disdain, as if an adult looked at a group of children without caring, and Carrot didn't understand either. How could I have such an idea? Mr. Klein is looking for me? Jason was slightly startled. The basic liquid of fire element is a very simple potion. Anyone can prepare it as long as they work hard. Returning to his bed, Jason crossed his legs sitting, he closed his eyes and ignored Carrot in front of him. For him who has just reached the 6th level, what Jason needs most now is to consolidate the spiritual energy in the 6th level meridians in his body, and at the same time heal the physical damage caused by preparing the fire element basic fluid this afternoon. Damage. Anyone can prepare it. Carrot curled his lips speechlessly. Looking at Jason, who returned to the bed to practice, he also sat cross-legged on his bed and muttered, "It seems that I have to work hard too. It makes no sense that you can prepare a level 1 elixir, but I can't prepare a level 5 elixir. Wouldn't that be very shameful?" With the repair of the level 6 spiritual power in his body, Jason felt a little bit confused in the afternoon. The injured body recovered quickly. Although it has not fully recovered, at least there will be no sequelae to the body due to this. Jason didn't have any good solutions for his somewhat weak body. Improving sexual strength was not something that could be accomplished overnight. In his previous life, he also went through a lot of training and prepared various elixirs. Some special secret recipes are slowly cultivated and prepared. What makes Jason feel gratified is that the liquid-like milky white spiritual energy that he originally had in the 5th level meridians, after it broke through to the 6th level meridians, because the original accumulation was too huge, it actually ended up directly in the 6th level meridians. Forming a light white spiritual energy flow, with such spiritual intensity, Jason understood that even if he continued to attack the 7th level now, he would have a certain degree of success. Of course, Jason did not do this. Although he did not go far on the path of a spiritual master in his previous life, as a pioneer in spiritual power research theory in his later life, he understood that the cultivation of a spiritual master is not a simple matter. The process of energy accumulation is more important than the control and mastery of the structure and combination of spiritual power elements. Now, he understands that what he needs is to step by step and consolidate the state of the 6th level of spiritual power. Moreover, the 6th level of spiritual power is a milestone in the cultivation of spiritual masters. Those whose spiritual power is below the 6th level, it only has the function of strengthening the body, but after reaching the 6th level, the explosive power is greatly enhanced, and this is the real qualification to practice spiritual skills. Among the regulations of the 6th Spiritual Power Academy, there is such a rule that as long as any student reaches the 6th level, he can obtain a basic skill secret book from the Academy's library. Early morning. In the office of the president of the Talon City Panacea Medicine Union, an old man wearing a shabby robe was sitting at the table, staring at a piece of paper in front of him, thoughtfully. This old man is the president of the Talon City Spiritual Medicine Masters Union, and President Saha, one of the only two fourth-level intermediate spiritual medicine masters in Talon City. Although Saha is the president of Talon City's Elixir Guild, he actually doesn't spend much time in the guild every day. Sometimes he will stay in his laboratory for a whole week without being seen. As a fourth-level elixir master, he was rarely moved by things as he devoted himself to the study of elixirs. However, this morning, he received a message and hurriedly came to his office in the Elixir Masters Union. There is no hesitation or indolence in the office. There was a knock on the door. Saha did not raise his head and said, "Please come in." His eyes were still fixed on the piece of paper in his hand. A woman with short hair held a pile of information in her hands and pushed in the door. When she saw Saha sitting there, the face of the woman with short hair was immediately full of respect, with a hint of admiration in her expression. If Jason were here at this moment, he would definitely recognize the short-haired woman as the waiter named Kathleen who received him at the front desk of the Elixirist Guild yesterday. "President, this is the information you want." According to statistics, the elixir signed by JS answered a total of 26 questions in the help area yesterday. Judging from the current feedback, there have been 23 questions. The author has been tested and proven to be correct, but there are still 3 issues that have not yet received feedback. Kathleen reported to Saha ably. Due to her nervousness, she could hear a slight tremor in her voice. In her heart, she was filled with gratitude to the elixir named JS. If not without him, I'm afraid I wouldn't have had the opportunity to report in person in front of President Saha. After hearing Kathleen's report, Saha's face did not change at all, as if he had already known the result in his heart. For a moment, President Saha raised his head slightly, with a trace of scrutiny in his eyes. I am sure that this elixir named JS is just a boy of 17 or 18 years old." Feeling Saha's powerful gaze, Kathleen lowered her head involuntarily, and then raised it sharply, her eyes full of confidence. He said, "I'm sure it should be him. The boy I've never seen before yesterday should be this JS. I've checked the list of our union, and there is no such elixir named JS in the union's records. And I was particularly impressed by him yesterday afternoon. He was quite casual in the union, and he looked like a disciple of a master of elixirs. At first, I thought he was going to the help area for help." For myself, Catherine was full of confidence in her memory. Yesterday, except for the boy who went to the help area, no one else in the help area left any special impression on her the whole day. If this JS is really the young man you mentioned, then he is a master of elixirs in his own right. President Saha pondered for a moment and said, "Please pay close attention to him. If you see him again next time, remember to inform me immediately." "Yes." Kathleen responded with a bow. Knowing what Saha meant, she immediately turned around and walked out the door. By the way, among the remaining 3 questions without feedback, the one numbered 01 in the help area, you can record that it is correct. President Saha said calmly. Kathleen, who was about to walk out of the office, couldn't help but was slightly startled. Then she thought that when the union set up a help area, President Saha also put a problem that he could not solve in cabinet number 01. As an example. In fact, everyone knows that this problem of President Saha is just a decoration in Talon City's Elixir Union. As the highest-ranking elixir in Talon City, President Saha is unable to solve the problem in Talon City. No one in the city can solve it. Now, according to President Saha, his problem has actually been solved? Is this possible? After seeing Catherine walking out, President Saha fixed his gaze on the table in front of him. On the table, several bottles of ablation agent were quietly placed on the table. "I put it over there." When he was only a second-level intermediate elixir practitioner more than 10 years ago, in order to help himself reach the second-level advanced level as soon as possible, Saha came up with the idea of formulating a second-level advanced ablation agent by changing the form of the medicine. The idea, but has never been successful. When the union set up a help area, I randomly put this question that I had thought of before, but I didn't expect that someone actually answered this question yesterday. And after the experiment, Saha was surprised to find that according to the method in the answer, as long as nothing unexpected happens, the ablation agent obtained is of extremely high quality, and if he only uses the spiritual consciousness of his fourth-level intermediate elixir master to prepare the second-level high-quality ablation agent, the quality of the ablation agent obtained may not necessarily reach the quality of the ablation agent obtained by using the solution method. This discovery made Saha extremely shocked. He never thought that a method that he had thought of in a whimsical way before could actually be realized, and this method was even better than what he could achieve purely by his own strength. JS. Saha murmured, no matter what, as long as that person is still in Talon City, I will definitely find him, but I have to tell the old ghost about this first and see if he can still. You dare to say that I am daydreaming all day long. Saha couldn't help but feel hatred in his heart when he thought about how Lao Gui always said that he likes to daydream because of this idea he had more than 10 years ago. Taking a long breath from his mouth, Jason, who was sitting cross-legged on the bed, suddenly opened his eyes, and a subtle light passed through his eyes. Feeling the pale white and thicker sixth-level spiritual power in his body, Jason nodded slightly and jumped up from the bed. After a night of practice, the level 6 spiritual power in Jason's body is now extremely stable in his meridians. Although he hasn't slept all night, Jason, who has been practicing, not only does not seem to be depressed, but is even more energetic. Jason, who has suffered countless hardships in his previous life, understands that if you want to get more than others, you have to pay more than others. After washing up casually, Jason walked towards the training ground of the Sith Spiritual Power Academy. Today is the day of the semi-annual assessment of the Sith Spiritual Power Academy. Walking slowly on the campus of the Sith Spiritual Power Academy, along the way, many people pointed at Jason after seeing him, and some people even showed a look of pity in their eyes. In fact, the assessments of the various departments and grades of the Sith Spiritual Power Academy are not conducted at the same time period, and the assessment times for different subjects are not necessarily certain. However, except for those students who will be assessed at the same time as Jason today, the entire many people in the Sith Spiritual Power Academy still know that Jason is going to take the assessment today. For Jason, a well-known figure who is known as the #1 waste in the Sith Spiritual Power Academy, there has been a lot of rumors on campus these days. After all, as long as Jason fails this assessment, he will become in history. He was the first person to be expelled from the Sith Spiritual Power Academy. Not far away, a huge stone building appeared in front of Jason's eyes. The magnificent architectural style and huge momentum were particularly eye-catching in the entire campus of the Sith Spiritual Power Academy. This stone building is the famous martial arts training ground of the Sith Spiritual Power Academy. All large-scale competitions and spiritual master evaluations in the entire Sith Spiritual Power Academy are generally held in this martial arts training ground. Look, Jason is here. Jason is here, Jason is here. It is indeed Jason. I didn't expect him to dare to come here. The first person in the history of the Sith Spiritual Power Academy to be expelled. It's so pathetic for students. As soon as Jason entered the martial arts training ground, there was a burst of cheers from the crowd in front of him. After seeing Jason, all the students who were in the same grade and were being evaluated were all excited. They whispered to each other and turned to look at Jason with various expressions in their eyes. Jason, who was the strongest person in the mainland in his previous life, naturally would not react to the looks of the students in these academies. After finding instructor Feng Yi, who taught him spiritual power cultivation in the crowd, he walked to this group of people on his own. Middle. After Jason came to the crowd, a student who was responsible for assisting instructor Feng Yi in the assessment immediately ran over and handed Jason an assessment paper. The entire evaluation paper is divided into several basic items such as age and level. At the bottom of the evaluation paper is a column for opponents you want to challenge. Here, you can fill in the person you want to challenge. In principle, the column can be filled in by any student in the same class as you, except those who are 2 levels or more lower than the person filling out the form. The Sith Spiritual Power Academy has two stages of assessment and scoring. The first stage is to test the student's spiritual power level. If the spiritual power level has improved compared to the last time, the student will directly pass the assessment this time. If the spiritual power level has not improved, you can challenge the opponent you want to challenge based on the challenge you filled in. The instructor will give the student an evaluation of whether he or she is qualified based on the challenge process and results. Senior Jason, you can choose me to be your challenge opponent. After the student handed the evaluation paper to Jason's hand, he glanced at instructor Feng Yi not far away, with a kind smile on his face, secretly whispered to Jason. This student's name is Luo Yi. He is only 14 years old this year. He entered the Sith Spiritual Power Academy 2 years later than Jason, but he is in the same class as Jason. In the last evaluation, Luo Yi just broke through to spiritual power. Level 6, with such outstanding talent, he is deeply loved by instructor Feng Yi. After hearing Luo Yi's kind reminder, Jason just smiled slightly, took the evaluation form, and filled in each column skillfully. As for the column of the opponent he wanted to challenge, Jason just left it blank and handed it over. Go up. Come on, let's go over there and take a look at the assessment of the students in teacher Feng Yi's class. At this moment, an instructor in his 30s who was being assessed in another class next to him suddenly stopped his own test and led the students towards Jason's class, came over. Teacher Stowe, if you don't test the students in your class there properly, why are you here? Seeing Stowe standing next to his class's assessment venue, instructor Feng Yi couldn't help but frowned and asked. Haha, Teacher Feng Yi, I just brought the students to your class to learn from it. Don't be so nervous. Only by communicating with each other can progress be made in the study of spiritual power. You continue, Teacher Feng Yi, you continue. No need. Don't care about us, I just want to see how strong the old students led by Teacher Feng Yi are. With Teacher Feng Yi's strength, I think the students you teach should be strong in all abilities. Stowe said with a joking expression. Standing aside with an expression on his face, he, who was often suppressed by Feng Yi in the academy, now held his hands in his arms, with a strange smile on his face, and said to the students behind him, you must watch carefully, remember you have to learn from the students in teacher Feng Yi's class, don't you understand? Especially the old students, there are a lot of things worth learning from them. At this point, Teacher Stowe's eyes fell straight on Jason in the crowd, who has always been under Feng Yi in the academy, has been waiting for this opportunity for a long time. This time, he has to fall on Feng Yi's face. The third-level senior spiritual master is here again. How about it? The students I teach are not as good as me, a third-level low-level spiritual master. There is even one student among the students who will be the first to be expelled from the Sith Spiritual Power Academy. Look at Feng Yi in the future. How to gain a foothold in the academy. No, it's too embarrassing. I heard that Teacher Stu and Teacher Feng Yi don't get along in the academy. Is this true? I think this Teacher Stu did it on purpose, and brought such a many people came here. Isn't this deliberately trying to embarrass our class? If you want to blame it, blame Jason. Alas, our class will be embarrassed now. After hearing Stowe's words, Jason's class, the students started talking in low voices. Continue to give me the test. If anyone makes any noise again, his qualification will be disqualified. After hearing the discussion in the crowd, Feng Yi's face instantly showed a trace of anger, and he shouted in a low voice. Next, Jin Ming. A student standing next to Feng Yi shouted loudly at the list. A somewhat thin student immediately walked to the field in front of Feng Yi. There was a huge stone placed in the center of the field. This stone looked like gold, but not gold, iron, but not iron. On the surface of the stone, there was a layer of light. Yes, green light. The student named Jin Ming came to the spirit testing stone, crouched, lowered his waist and exhaled for a while, then his eyes suddenly lit up, he shouted in a low voice, and punched out. With a bang, the energy surged, and the entire spirit test stone was suddenly struck into a thin layer. A fist mark appeared on the spirit test stone, and then slowly dissipated. Jean Ming, 16 years old, spiritual power level 6. Next. Jean Ming was quite frustrated. Although he had known for a long time that he was still at the 6th level of spiritual power and had not been promoted, but after hearing these words from instructor Feng Yi at the time, Jean Ming was still inevitably a little disappointed. Testing is still proceeding in an orderly manner. Baluo, 17 years old, spiritual power level 7, promoted. Next. Carls, 14 years old, spiritual power level 5, next. Next, Jason. With this name, as soon as he appeared, the entire audience's eyes immediately turned to a certain person in the crowd. In the eyes of everyone, Jason slowly walked forward as if nothing happened.